Hello everyone, welcome back to S2G Games. My name's Matthew. This is Docker. This is Gitlab. And this is a button in Gitlab that allows me to compile my game and release it to itch with a single click using Docker. Today, I am going to be showing off my continuous integration solution that I have been playing with. The original plan for this video was going to be to make it a devlog for Telemachus, my upcoming game. I haven't done any actual progress updates yet, and it turns out getting the template up and running took enough work that it was worth its own video. So this is my gameplay template. I have a console and an FPS counter. I've showed this off in Godot version 3. I also did a video on upgrading to Godot 4, so I'm not going to walk through the steps of changing the code to get this all to compile, but I am going to spend a fair bit of time looking at the Docker file and the GitLab file and explaining how these things work. The plan for this video is going to be to break it into a couple of parts. So if you are interested in what I was just talking about and you would want your game to have this feature, I am going to show a quick 10-minute getting started guide on here's the files you copy, here's the commands you run. It's not very complicated at all. After that, I'm going to come back around and I'm going to talk through what all these things are in detail. So if you have ever had any interest in Docker or GitLab, hopefully by the end of this video, you won't be an expert, but maybe you'll get to the level I'm at where I at least can figure out how to make a GitLab file from nothing. So this Docker image, by the way, was originally based on one by this guy Barichello. He made it for Godot version 3, and I have not seen an update from him yet, so I took it upon myself to rewrite it for Godot 4. I will showcase those changes when we get there too. But credit where credit's due, this was not something I came up with on my own, but it is definitely something I spent a lot of time tweaking and making my own. A couple things you're going to need if you want to just use this tool for yourself. First, you're going to need Git. Now, Git is a source control solution. This is a program you're going to download and it's going to connect up to the cloud. And what it'll do is, one, it will store your code offsite. So if your computer dies, you lose your hard drive, you don't lose your code. Losing your source code is a rite of passage for a lot of computer programmers. I have a lot of programs I wish I had my source code for. So please don't be that guy. Start using Git, even if you're not going to use the thing I'm showing off in this video. With that said, there's a number of places you can store your code. You could go to GitHub, you could go to Bitbucket, or you could go to GitLab. Now, I enjoy and would recommend GitLab because it's not just a place to store your code, it also has a number of extra features. So if you look on the sidebar, there's a wiki, there's a bunch of other things. They have like a Trello board built in, and most importantly, for this tutorial, you have a continuous integration and deployment pipeline. All you really need is two files. There's a GitLab ci.yml and a versioninfo.yml. This is the script that will download and build and do all that stuff automatically. And it is including this version info file, so you shouldn't have to change anything in this script. You'll just come here and change a couple small things. So there's some variables you will want to set on your own version. You take these two, copy it into your own GitLab project, and when you push the code, it should automatically start building in the CI/CD pipeline. Alternatively, if I come in here, I can click this fork button. I can make a Godot forking template, forking example. And so here is a project that's been forked. And what you're going to do if you're forking this, just so you know, when you fork, you get everything. So including some of my add-ons and Git modules and Docker files, some of these other things you may or may not actually need. This is a easier way to do it. You just click that one button. Now I have a new project I just made. I should go in though to settings, general, scroll down to advanced, and then you can remove the fork relationship. Forking is a popular thing for open source projects if you want to contribute back to my template. So if you're going to use it as a template, you don't need to keep that relationship. So that's that. I have this example project I now made. If I go over to CI/CD, nothing is run yet. If I were to push code, it would run automatically, but I can run a pipeline manually. And here we go. So you'll notice there are 4 jobs that are running. These are based on that script that I quickly showed earlier, and they're going to use something called Docker. They're going to pull an image that I created. This takes about 3 minutes. Once that's done, they're going to run through the image and they're going to make the game. And then there's only really one other thing to set up. So we are almost done already. Download is completed, so it's going to pull my source code, build my stuff, and it's almost instant because there's not really anything to the Godot project. And it says job succeeded. So I actually now have access to these job artifacts. So if I browse them, I can click in here and you can see that I have my template. So I could download this and play the game and it works just fine. And there's my little thing that I was showing off earlier. There's one job left. This is itch.io-deploy. I'm going to click start on this, but it's going to fail because there's a couple things left we need to set up. If I come in to the version info file, I have the group name and the game name, and that's going to have to match the URL for your game. So you see I'm sdggames.itch.io/minemark. So this was my Minecraft benchmark I made. I would need the group name to be SDG Games. The game name needs to be minemark. So it needs to match that. Once you've done that, if you go ahead and run this job, it will still fail, but it'll tell you why it failed. My Butler API key has not been set. So Butler is the name of Itch's service that it created that allows you to connect these things. So if I come over here, you'll see there is instructions on how to get set up. I'm just going to go to the API keys page and I can generate a new API key. So if I come back here, I'm going to go to settings, CI/CD, and I'm going to go down to variables, and I need to add a variable that contains my key. So the name is going to be Butler API key, and the variable name, we're going to generate a new one, is going to be this string. So you're going to copy that, you're going to come over, you're going to paste it in, you're going to want to mask it so it doesn't show up in logs. If you give someone this key, you give them access to your account, they can upload games on your behalf. So you want to be careful with this. So you set that up, and then when you run it again, your game should appear on your itch page. I don't have an itch page actually set up, so mine still failed, but it told me why it failed. Now, if you've been following along, let's just stop and acknowledge that you did just take your itch API key, which is something you want to keep private, and you passed it to a Docker image that I created, and you're trusting that I'm not doing anything malicious with it. If you don't care, I will say that you can trust me. However, I'm going to show you how to make your own Docker image, and then after that, I'll actually explain how those images work and take it a step further of if you'd want to customize those images, how would you do that? If you are worried about this, you can just click revoke on the API keys, and that will get rid of it, and then you won't have to worry about that anymore. So that's that part. Let's get into Docker. So Docker is kind of like Git, where there is a Docker Hub is the name of the place where they're called containers, where they're stored, and Docker Desktop is the software that allows you to push those up to the hub. So you're going to need to get a Docker Hub account. You're then going to need to download Docker Desktop, and you're going to need to sign in to make sure they're connected, and that enables you to pull and push images. So once that's done, you will need my Docker file. This is a part of this project. So if you forked it, you already have that. If not, go ahead and download this file. And then you're just going to navigate to the directory where this file is stored, and you're going to run the command docker build -t. This is giving it a tag or name, and then you're going to have the name of your Docker account / the name of whatever you want this project to be called, and then you're going to give it a tag. So : tag. I'm doing 4b16 because we are on Godot 4 beta 16. And then dot just means compile the Docker file you find in this directory. So I hit enter. This is going to take a few minutes to build. It could be up to an hour or two depending on your connection speed and different things. So you're just going to let this go. The next step is going to be to push this. Now that I've created the image, you'll see if I go over to Docker here, go to images, this one has been created less than a minute ago. I can click push to hub and it will push that up. Alternatively, I can come down here and I can do a Docker push, and we're doing image 16. And then if I hit enter here, you'll see it'll go through and it'll let you know which layers it's pushing. It has pushed everything up. If I go to my Docker Hub and refresh the web page, you can see this was pushed an hour ago. So within the past hour, that went up. And now the final step is if you are going to want to use this in your project, you're going to want to go to the Gitlab ci.yml, and you're going to look for the line that says image. It's going to appear more than once, I think 3 times in total. No, 4 times. There's once at the bottom. So 4 times in total. And you're going to change this to whatever image you just pushed. Ignore the part after the colon. That's going to be in the version info file. We'll get to that in a second. But you're going to want to replace this with whatever image you pushed. So in my case, well, it's the same name, but in your case, this will be something different. That's what you'll put up here. So what happens when the next version of Godot comes out? This may look slightly different once we get out of the betas, but let's say you're going from 17 to 18. All you're going to want to do is you're going to change these two lines, 53 and 54, in the Docker file, and you're just going to update this to whatever version you're currently on. And then you're going to rerun these commands. So docker build -t, whatever the name is, but it's going to be beta 17 this time. Hit enter, it's going to go. Notice it cached all the way up to number 9. That's because I've done all these steps previously. So that's nice that it'll save you a little bit of time not having to rerun everything. Then you're going to come over to the version info file and you're going to change the Godot version here. Now, the one thing to note, you are going to want to wait on this until the Docker image has been pushed to Docker Hub, because if you're pushing to Git and it can't find the image, then it can't build. So it will fail if you push this too early. So that's how you're going to update this if you want to run your own Docker image. I think the next thing we're going to do is dive into what exactly have we been doing this whole time. I've kind of been going light on explanation. This is a lesser known thing, but Godot doesn't actually require a visual editor. There are a lot of reasons why you want to use the Godot editor. Obviously, modifying content through these visual nodes is a great thing, but if you wanted to, for whatever reason, you could run it from the command line. You can do a number of things here. You can open scenes, you can play things, and most importantly for this, you can export your game. If you run a command like this, you don't have to open the editor at all. You just add headless on top of this command, and this will build for Linux or Android in this case. And you can have a built game by running a single command in a command line. So that's what we're going to be doing. It's a little bit more complicated than this because I don't want to run this command locally on my computer. I want to run it in the cloud automatically when I push my build. So the first step in all this is going to be to use Docker. Docker uses what's called containers, and they are kind of like a virtual machine. They're a lot more lightweight. So think of the difference between a car and a motorcycle. Both will do the same thing, namely they'll get you from A to B, but one is lighter and more efficient and smaller. Under the hood, it's a very different model than virtualization, but at the end of the day, it is still running a part of an operating system. So I have a simple script here. It is going to start with the from command, which is going to tell us what we are starting with. So this is the Ubuntu operating system. This is a form of Linux, and we are going to be using this and building on top of it. Right now, we are running a command to just echo hello. It's not doing anything practical yet. If I go ahead and build this container, you'll see it has run echo hello, which again didn't do anything. So essentially all I've done is make a basic Ubuntu operating system. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this container. And it's going to take this image here. It says in use. If I go to containers, this is a container that was made. So Docker has a fun thing they do where they will give you a random set of words to describe each container. So if you're looking for a new banking password, that's where you can get one. I'm going to just open this up, go to the terminal, and here we have a full environment. So I'm going to open up a bash shell because I like having flexibility. I can do something like, I don't know, apt-get update. And this, if you've ever used Linux, is a very common command. Well, I'm running it here within the shell. If I do, let's see, list directories, I'm going to go ahead and make a directory here. So I'm going to call it mattest. And if I do an ls again, you'll see mattest is a directory that is within this container. Now, the thing about containers is they will always start up from the state that the Docker file created them in. So if I go and I exit this Docker container, it's going to close out. You'll see we have no containers running. And if I then run this again, if you'll notice there's a different name to it. And if you might have guessed, if I do a ls command to list of directories, that directory I created is gone. This is a brand new container. If I want to, for example, create a directory, I can do that here. So I'm going to do a make directory mat test, save the file and build the container. So I'm going to run this container again. I'm going to then open up, notice there's a new name one more time, go to terminal, ls, and mat test is a folder within the Docker container. So that's how that works, super simple. The thing I'm going to do is, instead of just making a folder, I'm going to make a number of folders and install Godot and then download a script as well. So we're going to stop this container. I don't actually think that works. Stop it from here. Okay, container's done. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to put this back and just walk through this real quick. So we're going to update and install. And we're going to want a number of things. We're going to want Git and Python, and we're going to want to be able to zip and unzip files. And then we're also going to want open JDK, basically every dependency you would need for Godot. These dependencies in particular are for the visual renderer. I mentioned that we're running in headless mode. Unfortunately, there's currently a bug. So these are just making the Docker image bigger and not actually doing anything, but you need them or you will have a crash. So I'll remove this once that gets fixed. But if we go down, this is Butler. This is a script that we are using. It is from Barichello. This guy made the Godot 3 version of this, so I've modified it, but he gets the credit for the Docker file as well as for the Butler script in particular. So I'm going to download from his GitLab, and I'm going to put this in the container, and this is what we use to connect to itch. We're going to install Android SDK, set up some key store settings, and then this is the part where we install Godot. So we're going to set some arguments for the versions, which are what you'll change if you want a different version, and then we're going to download from the tuxfamily.org. This is where Godot is, and notice these substitutes: Godot version, subdirectory, Godot version, release name. We're going to get the export templates as well as the x86-64 version of Godot. So we'll run these two commands to get these and download them. We're then going to make some directories, unzip, move things, clear out our temp files, and then finally we're going to run Godot real quick. Once we have run Godot the first time, we're going to set up some export settings. So we're going to echo all these things into the editor settings file directly. Once that's done, Godot is installed on the system. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to build this one last time. This is Godot beta 17. So it's built, and then we can push that. And the second half now is going to be to pull. So I'm also going to build this into my test one, and then we're going to run that again. So if I come in here and I do this, it'll tell you we're running Ubuntu. I also have Godot installed, and I can run it in a headless mode. So Godot headless, there we go. We're running for beta 17. The next step is going to be to use this Docker image to compile our code. So step one is we're going to need to download the code. So it's going to take the code and it's going to pull it in. I'm actually going to open Bash. That'll be easier. We are then going to move into that directory, and we're going to want to do a git submodule update. It'll guarantee that we will have all of the code pulled, even if it is in different projects. Once that's done, Godot has a couple of limitations which are a little bit annoying right now, where it doesn't really like it when folders don't exist. So I'm going to do a couple make directory commands just to set up a few folders that Godot is going to try to make, and for some reason it seems to fail. Finally, once we've done all that, we can run our actual command that we need. So here we go. Godot verbose headless export release mode. There's also an export debug mode. I do have both in the full version of the script. We're going to be exporting for Windows, and we're going to put it in the build/Windows release folder. We're going to call it template00.exe. I'm going to run this. There are some errors, but at the end it will I don't think it'll say that it succeeded, but it did succeed. So if I do an ls, you'll see there is a build folder. If I go to build Windows release, and ls, you'll see there's a template.exe and a template.pack. So we have created these files, and essentially we did compile the game successfully. So that is what we're doing, but we don't want to do this locally on our computer again. That's the whole point. So I'm going to close this out. Goodbye. And container's gone. We're going to do this up in the cloud instead. So this command pulls the container. It automatically will pull the code into it. That's just by default. We have this recursive strategy, but each one of these is going to signify a job. So this is the Windows release job. And within that job, it's going to tell us what stage it's in. You might want multiple stages. So I have, for example, here's build and here's deploy, and they'll run one after another. So stages will wait for previous stage. All it's going to do is it's going to run this script. So it's going to make these 3 directories, and then it's going to run the command, exactly what we just did by hand. And at the end, it's going to save an artifact. It's going to name it the same as our executable, and it's going to put the path. So everything from the build folder down is going to be saved. And those will set to expire after 6 hours because we'll do things with them later. Here's the hdeploy job. I'm not going to walk through this one in the same level of detail, but essentially it's going to run this butler script that's installed, and it's going to call butler push a handful of times. I'm going to put this back because I did simplify this. As you can tell, there is a lot more here. This is the full version. Starts with include version info.yml. The release number here, you can change this to anything you want. There's some recommendations. Typically, what you're going to do is this would be a major version, a minor version, and a bug fix version. And when you build that, that would be in the name of the executable. So it's going to have the name of the game, the release number, and then the internal name is also going to have the commit hash, so you'll know exactly what commit this came from if you're ever trying to debug something. So the build internal jobs are going to use export-debug. The build release jobs are going to use export-release. This you could think of almost like a function call within a GitLab file. This will take the build internal job here, and it'll paste all that code right in here, and it'll run it. So if you wanted to do something else with this, you would just go open up that Docker image like we showed. You would type in whatever commands you want, make sure that those commands do what you're expecting, do any debugging in that live environment. And once you're done, just copy and paste it into the Docker file as a run command, or copy and paste it into the GitLab file as a part of the build script. And that is really all it takes to automate these days. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching. I realize this video is out of date before I even release it, so I'm going to update to release candidate 1 real quick. I'll just put up on screen those instructions on how to do that, but it's exactly what we walked through, so hopefully you already know. And with that, thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. I should be doing another 20 games challenge finally and getting back into my actual devlogs. As I said, this is a bit of a distraction, but I don't know, I thought it was useful for me, and hopefully it's useful for you. I'd love to hear if you end up using this in your actual project. Let me know what you think. And if you have any questions, I do have a Discord, so feel free to jump in and ask away. That is all I have for today, so thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon.